Hello, and welcome to the lore of Braunhaven. Today we're going to be talking about the Docks Ward. And so, uh, a quick note about the city of Drzewodolek is that you'll note that there doesn't seem to be any roads that connect in between the different districts and living areas. And this is because elves, or specifically high elves, but pretty much all elves, prefer to feel the ground under their feet. And so you do have these large, wide avenues that connect throughout the city that are paved with quartz gravel, but you don't see that in between the homes, and instead you have lush grasslands and a typical forest floor. They do manage the trees so that you don't have a whole bunch of undergrowth or detritus from trees after storms and whatnot that could be later turned into fuel for wildfires. The elves are very canny at taking care of nature, but you don't see a whole lot of roads. The other thing that you don't see is they don't have names for these avenues that they're main connecting roads, and they don't have any directional signs other than you might see a sign that will say, for instance, Rollum Tavern and Inn, and an arrow pointing straight ahead down the road, or an arrow pointing to the left. And directions for people that aren't familiar with the city of Drzewodolek, if you were to stop and ask one of the denizens of the city for directions, you're likely going to get an answer of something along the lines of to go up the avenue that way until you see a large stone oak tree, and when the sun is directly overhead of that tree, then you'll want to turn right, and you can cut through the Venkian ward, and you'll see another avenue, and just continue on that avenue until you get to where you're going. And this is the nature of elvish directions in the city of Drzewodolek. Um, they, of course, being elves, have a natural affinity for nature and finding their ways around. And so this can be a little disconcerting for people that come to the city. And a lot of times people just simply get lost. And that could be a good and bad thing. If you're in a hurry, it's definitely a bad thing. But if you are wanting to explore the city, sometimes it's a happy mistake. But of the city of Drzewodolek, the Docks Ward, sitting in between the Venkian Ward directly to the northwest and the Duin Ward directly to the southeast, the Docks Ward is probably the most kind to outsiders. And this is because, unlike the Glossian Empire, Drzewodolek never closed their ports due to the demon plague. And the houses of Drzewodolek, as well as some of the guilds, have financial interests across the Dragon Sea in far off Orentis. And actually, Drzewodolek, for the most part, has a pretty good trade relationship with Orentis. So you will see Orentian ships and crews in the docks wards of Drzewodolek. And this is a very well kept secret with the elves, is that, and this is not something that is widely known in the Glossian Empire, the easiest way to get to Drzewodolek is to travel the coastline and come up the Inian River. The river, it seems to be a solid point that flows through the Solvanus forest. And so while the rest of the landscape may change if you are traveling over land and causing you to get lost, the Inian River is always a steadfast point. Nobody knows a reason for this. But the Inian River doesn't change course or direction. It always flows out of the hills of the Solvanus forest, and it always dumps into the Dragon Sea, and therefore any ship traffic or boats that travel up and down the Inian River are always guaranteed, if they're going upriver, they are guaranteed to make their way to Drzewodolek. So you have a mixture of peoples, mostly, of course, your highest population is going to be high elves, but you're also going to see some Arentians or a minor amount of Ereboshians. They do have some trade with Erebashi as well, and these humans intermingling. Of course, so you will find probably a higher count of half elves in the district, but for the most part, the first thing that an outsider will know, if they are, especially if they are of a merchant trade, or sailors of any kind, they're going to notice that the docksword of Drzewodolek is not this seedy hive of vice and inequity that you would find in most other ports. You're not going to find a bunch of brothels and gambling dens. I mean, there is some vice to be found, but you're not going to see a high level of it because uh, the city of Drzewodolek just simply isn't going to put up with it. Um, they the other thing that you're going to notice is that yes, there is a higher amount of activity than the rest of the city, but like the rest of the city of Drzewodolek, after the sun sets, everything, even in the docks ward, gets rather quiet. The whole city just kind of decides to go and rest, and this is not common in other places around the known world. About 20% of the elven diet is actually fish, fished from the Indian River. And you're going to see the largest part of aside from shipping and whatnot, is going to be fishing that you're going to find here in the Docksward. And of course, a part of that, the set mindset that everything gets a little bit quieter. Pretty much things start to wind down as the sun is setting and the fishing boats are coming in off the Indian River, and that's when pretty much shops start to close and things like that. But there are numerous seafood stands, smokehouses for salting and drying fish. You can readily purchase iron rations throughout the docks ward. A lot of these are sold to ship crews, used for long voyages, things of that nature. And it seems like during the daylight hours, it is just a constant hive of activity. Now, there are two guilds that have their halls here in the docks ward, and the first is that of the arborist laborers and construction workers, and they are just across the avenue, kind of inland a bit, and they have the auspicious nature of wielding and owning the largest guild hall in the entire city. And I mean, it is hard to miss. They have large domes, kind of a trio of circular domes that make up this guild hall, and it is huge. They have their largest dome is basically their offices and planning areas where they are, of course, having their architects and engineers design, you know, new areas that are going to be worked at with the arborists, sometimes working with druids in order to enhance that growing cycle so that they can grow it faster, or planning or making plans to plant new trees for future projects. And then the outer domes are usually work placement halls or meeting areas for guild affairs. And this, like I said, this is the largest guild in the area. Um, they pretty much run everything if on the docks, because there is a law that ship crews are not allowed to use their own stevedores and teamsters for loading and unloading cargo. The law states that you have to hire work teams from the Guild of Arborist Laborers and Construction Workers And this is a guarantee by the Council of Elders for the people of Drzewodolek that elves will always have work, especially along the Docksward. And there are stiff penalties for crews that do not follow these guidelines. Can be as high as, uh, aside from a large fine that is taken from the coffers of whatever ship is found to be in error, but uh, this can also lead to things such as the first officer or quartermaster or even the captain of that vessel being imprisoned until those fines are paid. Um, it's a big deal. You just don't do that. The other guild that holds sway in the Docksward, of course, is the Guild Hall of Fishing and Shipping. And they have a agreement with the Council of Elders that all law enforcement for the Docksward actually goes through their guild hall. And so the way this works is you don't see watch people walking around policing the Docksward wearing specific uniforms. Instead, they still wear the livery of whatever house that they came from. Usually, that is going to be from House Helisaren, which is the biggest military arm of the elves of Drzewodolek. But they do wear an insignia. They are all no matter what house they're wearing from, it, no matter what livery they're wearing, they will be wearing an armband that has the signification that they are a part of the watch of the Guild Hall of Fishing and Shipping. And so, because this has been kind of given over to the Guild of Fishing and Shipping and Fishing, they uh, tend to crack down on crime and vice pretty harshly. And it is known that the laws in the that are enforced in the Docksward are some of the strictest in the entire city. They just are not going to put up with the shenanigans of the typical drunken sailor that's out wanting to look for more drink and more whores while they're in port. The elves are not going to put up with that. Now, that's not to say that there isn't some of this going on. Another feature of the Docksward is the Kareth Tea Barge. So, some of the ceremonies and aspects that one would find in Orentis and the nature of how they're employed in Orentis have made their way over into Drzewodolek. And in this case, you have the Kareth Tea Barge. Now, if you know anything about Orentian tea houses, and you probably don't because I haven't written it yet, but they have this thing called tea houses. To an outsider, they would just simply call a tea house a brothel, but that's not entirely true. Yes, there are some lower quality, low end tea houses that are such, but the majority that are of least moderate quality to very expensive tea houses are not brothels. I mean, they are, but there's more to it than that. The women and men that work in a tea house are not simply doxies. They are cultured. They most of them speak multiple languages. They read multiple languages. They are skilled in the arts of Orentian tea ceremonies, and they are intelligent. They are sought out. They're known as companions, and they are sought out by individuals for that state, for companionship, not just for an hourly night on the town. And so they have brought some of that to the Docksward via the Kareth Tea Barge. And this is run by a half-elf named Sefanian Kareth. And initially, Sefanian, who is The elves, the especially high elves, have a rather androgynous nature, but some of the elves take that to an extreme. In most cases, you can tell the gender of an elf being either male or female, but in some cases it's hard to tell. And Safanian is one of the more androgynous elves of the region. Nobody really knows what they are, but they are a half elf, I can tell you that, which is a little strange because they are not taking some of the aspects of their human parentage. It seems that they got more of the genes from their elven heritage. And Safanian wanted to set up a tea house in the docks ward, and the pretty much the people of Drzewodolek absolutely said no. They are uh, high elves are a little bit more liberal than the wood elves, but even the high elves didn't want that factor in their city, or what they perceived as that factor. And so Safanian went to the guilds, specifically the Guild of Fishing and Shipping, and had the guild talk to the Primarch of the Elder Council on uh, on his behalf, and or their behalf. Sorry, um, that essentially they came to an agreement, a compromise, and what this is that at sundown, the Kareth Tea Barge starts to take on customers and passengers, and the tea barge sets sail and anchors in the middle of the Indian River, and it will stay there until sunrise the next morning, when anchor is pulled up, and then the ship is or the barge is sailed back into port, and the customers can go ahead and leave and go about their business. What happens on the T barge? Safanian takes great care to make sure that nobody believes that he employs prostitutes, and he will tell people that if that thought is had or voiced openly, that they are prostitutes of some kind, he will tell that customer that they are not prostitutes. They are cultured and intelligent companions, and you are more than welcome. If that is the attitude that you're going to have aboard his tea barge, you are more than welcome to disembark. And if that means you have to swim back to shore, you better be rested up, because he's not going to or they are not going to tolerate that. Um, the cost is not inexpensive. Now, for the evening, if you, it depends on what you are really looking for. The cost is anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000 facial or silver pieces. So anywhere from 100 to 300 gold pieces, and for that cost, depending on which companion you're selecting and what services you're looking for while you're there, can be anything from spending the evening in excuse me, in say the social room, where they do have a high stakes gambling table. They have a Rentian chef that Safanian has coaxed over from another crew that has been working with the Kareth Tea Barge, and is a top-notch chef, doing a fusion kind of menu between Orentian food styles and traditional Elvish cuisine. And then, of course, during in the social room, you can sit and chat at small intimate tables, uh, talking with a companion, just enjoying their company. Of course, food is served as well, or as drinks. Now, if you're paying the higher amount, there is below decks. There are private rooms, and most that are paying that higher amount, they spend some time in the social room, chatting with their companion, and then move to the private rooms down below. And they get the room for the night, and in the morning, of course, things are done. Everybody gets dressed and leaves. And so that is the Kareth Tea Barge, and the high elves of Drzewodolek. I mean, like I said, this was a compromise. But if you talk to somebody on the streets, especially older high elves, they will tell you that it's a den of iniquity, and that everybody knows what goes on that tea barge. There is a stigma about it that is not widely tolerated, and so but they're okay with it as long as it's not in their city and it's out in the middle of the river in the middle of the night. So that is the Docks Ward. Next week we will be talking about the Venkian Ward, which is kind of the middle class district. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.